So when we talk IoT security, we talk of things that are very large in number, that are things and normally standing alone somewhere, and of course are deployed in very large quantities and often are regarded as a relatively unimportant device. It is just a temperature sensor, or it's just a device to make a connectivity. But finally, it is very essential. It is finally transporting essential information, and this should not be compromised.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's large numbers, so it's a huge attack surface, as we describe it in the IT security world. And devices are there because there is a reason. Someone is investing into deploying those devices to get something in return, and you expect that those devices will behave the way you expect them to behave. They will keep collecting the data you ask them to collect, or deliver some command or action the way you want them to do it. So keeping the behavior of the device is very important. Keeping the data that you are collecting, that you are sensing, secure, which means confidentiality and integrity. So trusting the data is absolutely key. Otherwise, there is no point of deploying something to collect data if you can make no use of the data collected because you have a trust issue. So it's a lot about the device behaving the way you expect, and the data staying secure and trusted to deliver the value of why you deploy the IoT devices. The last point for me, which is important on that question, is how do you keep those devices over time manageable? You can sometimes deploy devices for 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years in some kind of large critical infrastructure devices, and you need a way to keep the management of those devices manageable and do it in a very trustable way. So this is absolutely key to managing the security life cycle of those devices.
Yeah, and these devices are standalone. They are
Yes.
not an IT system observed by people every day.
Yep.
They are very far away and often driven by batteries in remote locations. So access is not granted
Yes.
anymore,
Yep.
but the consequences could be dramatic if they are compromised.
Exactly. And every year or month you can keep them operating the way you want rather than replacing is a better return on your investment.
This sometimes very big difference in
Yes.
financial return.
Definitely. I think there are, well, in my view, the most important reason is you want to be able to benefit from the value of deploying IoT. You are deploying connected devices for a reason. It's not because it's cool or hype. You expect some return on investment, and you need to secure that return. And ignoring security when you deploy an IoT device is kind of putting in jeopardy the chance to have that return. And I think that's the first main reason.
Of course, and finally, often it's a system or it's a deployment that has a wide range geographically or also business-wise. And of course, it's then not only about making money, but it's also avoiding losing money.
Exactly.
And running into risks that finally could compromise and make fail the whole company. And of course, it can even go into issues of not only security, but also safety, or that the things are endangered. And of course, that can have huge impacts on reputation and damage that is perhaps
completely
very high, so lethal to the company.
Yeah. The other aspect is you can enable business by adding security to IoT. I think if you do it right, you can enable business models which are unsinkable before because way too risky. But if you do it right, then you can certainly find a way to manage it properly. And typically enabling remotely additional features that you are able to upsell to your customer is of great benefit. I think there's some very interesting cases. Typically, Tesla upselling an extended range by unlocking the battery by a software update is a very interesting model for them for sure. But you want to keep that under protection of a trusted mechanism. Otherwise, people will fraud it, and then you lose the benefit.
Absolutely. And I think that's then the additional benefit of making things secure, because you can upsell and you can really add features that otherwise are never thinkable or doable.
Exactly.
And I think that is an immediate return of investment, which is, of course, a difficult thing. Why invest into security when I see not the benefit? But here's a clear benefit that finally, thanks to the cloud connectivity, so much more can be done.
Exactly, yes.
I think here you are the specialist.
Thank you.
What can be perfected here?
First, there is no perfect security, whatever perfect means. If by perfect we mean it's unbreakable, it doesn't exist. Everyone who is pretending that he has the perfectly secure solution is either naive, incompetent, or a crook. There is no way that it could happen. If you spend enough time with the right skills and proper funding, someone will be able to break it. So what can people do? I think the first thing is to admit that you will or your solution or your technology will be breached one day. And as soon as you admit that, you start to think in a very different way how to manage and how to deploy your device and to keep them secure, because it forces you to think what is going to happen after the breach. What do? I can do a lot of things to prevent that moment to happen. But if I admit this is going to happen, then I can start focusing on what's after the breach, which is equally important, or sometimes even more important than that first phase. So I think that's a very good, I would say, philosophy. Assume this will happen and start thinking on how do you manage that event. And then it's do it from the very beginning. Think about the security in the design of your product, in the process of putting a product into the field, and also in the process of removing, decommissioning your product in the field is super important too from a security perspective. People tend to forget the end of life of a product, the decommissioning, the revoking. If you provide some right to someone and you decommission your product without revoking the right, maybe it's something that you're losing. So the secure by design on the technology and the process level is fundamental.
Absolutely. And I think it's also important to do the max. I mean, when you know a way of making it better, then you must go this way. There you cannot save, so to say, and make it a little cheaper, because it immediately increases the risk, and probably the extra you have to do to make it right is relatively small. But it needs, of course, the right knowledge, the right competencies, and the right partners that can really deliver. And I think we together have really set up a concept that is unique. And I would say probably we really deliver the max with bidirectional end-to-end security with very frequent change of keys and making all very difficult finally to make the security attacked.
No, you're absolutely right. And you mentioned end-to-end, which is also something which is absolutely key. Think the security from a system perspective and end-to-end. We're always focusing about the device side because that's the visible part for everybody. But there is always something in the back end which is managing, receiving data or initiating commands, and the entire chain has to be secure, not only the device.
No. And it's often disregarded, or sometimes people think, oh, I'm in a cloud solution that I can just source and everything is done, but this is very often not the case.
It is.
It is just superficial, and insofar it's really a different approach to make it end-to-end secure.
Yes.
Yeah, I think first of all, such events are of course something with a high profile and makes it interesting to do something there, because you can have quickly gain a lot of attendance. Therefore, I think security is very important to such, in the case of such events, and of course such events also have a high installation grade. There's a lot of infrastructure involved, and more devices are employed to make things better. And therefore, one should not underestimate the effort that should go into anything that goes around such an event.
I think you're right. I think the exposure is maximum. There is a huge reputation damage for the country, for the International Olympic Committee, and everybody will look at it, and any incident will become immediately a big thing, whatever it is, and cybersecurity is part of it. I think the Tokyo is going to deploy or is deploying a lot of connected solution to make the life of the athletes, the life of the visitors more easy, to better manage the flow of a lot of people of the crowd. They're going to use autonomous vehicle to move people across the city. So there will be an hyper connectivity needs for the events, which means a higher exposure. The threat surface and the attacks will be bigger than ever. And I think they're very worried about it. I was reading that they announced recently that the government is going to hack intentionally IoT consumer devices to raise awareness and make sure that the population is doing something about it before hackers do, which is quite interesting that the government is passing a law to authorize company to do that, to kind of preventively improve the situation. They're going to rely a lot on facial ID to manage entry of guests and so on. And then you have all the personal data, confidentiality issues. So it's going to be big for sure, because they need it and they cannot afford any glitch in the system. So it'll be interesting to watch.
In fact, and of course these events are always platforms to demonstrate new solutions, new technology, and especially in Asian countries this is quite prevalent. But I think that also shows how important it is that that security is really at play, and how much must be done.
I think it's a mix of all of this. I think there's a lot of barriers which we need collectively to overcome. I think the first one is awareness. Everybody is talking about it, but I think it even maybe too much. The noise level is very high, and people at the board of the company or in the government, they know something has to be done, but I think they're kind of struggling how to tackle the problem. So there's an awareness issue. It's probably easier to look somewhere else than trying to go through the complexity of solving it. So that's definitely one angle that is slowing down adoption of proper security for IoT, and that's true for other domain typically.
Yeah, and of course it is still probably early days. I mean, many products, the security is not described in a data sheet, or nothing is contained in a product, in a component or sub-assembly or finished product. And I think this is really a point of awareness and training, that security is as a part of a specification than anything else. And of course, it needs finally a whole chain of security, and this is for sure not so easy to find in these days. And I think insofar also our cooperation is quite a model, how we build such a chain together from at all the levels of the technology, that the several components play well together and are solid and support each other, and finally make what we said an end-to-end security that is really robust and cannot be compromised easily, and especially can be maintained over time and over the whole lifetime of the product.
No, definitely. And I think what we're solving together in the partnership is part of the complexity. We coming with something which is already available, pre-integrated, and kind of a turnkey solution, at least for the security, which is easing the adoption for your customers. There's no more excuse about the complexity. It's too complex, I don't understand, I don't have the skills, is going away with the way we are collaborating for our customers. So that's definitely a plus to go around that barrier.
Absolutely, and I think it remains to really explain what all is involved in making a secure solution. There is often sometimes just superficial knowledge, and quickly some backdoors overlooked that where things really should happen correctly, and how easily can also be overcome, and is not so finally high barrier for an attack. And therefore I think the communication is very important also. I think learning the society more what means security, and especially our customers and specialists, that they have a better appreciation what is the vocabulary here, and what are the principles, the dominant design, as it's called, what is a good security solution.
I agree. And then on probably the last angle is the political aspect of the standardization or the regulation, which it is evolving, but it's at a pace which has nothing to do with technology and innovation. I think it will always be behind. So waiting for the regulation to solve the problem is very naive. Yeah. It will help, but it will always be late and insufficient. They will always go for the minimum acceptable common denominator, which is a lower security standard than what is needed.
Yeah, it should be a strong industry initiative to really build secure solutions and resolve such problems without further regulation needs. That would be ideal. Yeah, whether it will be solved is of course a question. We can for sure make a lot to solve it and implement it from a technical point of view. I think we have a solution today. We have, at least we together, have a whole chain of making things secure, as we have said before. And insofar, I think it's a matter of penetration. How well is this deployed into all the various applications? Or, of course, we successfully do it. Other people, the companies successfully doing this. This is, I think, the key question. What is the adaptation rate? And of course, also where is some pain? Because the pain will finally drive also our customers to implement in a different pace.
I agree. I think that adoption is key, and I think you will never have a perfect, super clean, best-of-breed deployment. You always have some legacy floating around, and you need to manage with that in your ecosystem. So it can be seen as a never-ending game, but the goal is to raise the security level as much as you can every time. So technically, I think, fasting forward 10 years, we probably will have solved what we know today as a security challenge, but I can bet that some new one will emerge in 5 years that we will still working on in 10 years and so on. What was a challenge 10 or 20 years ago, security-wise, has been solved. Some industry are learning from that time, some are rediscovering the hard way the same thing. But if I simply look at the way our attack lab is evolving the attack, I'll give you an example that maybe 10, 15 years ago, we were using one laser to induce a fault into silicon and keep it synchronized with the CPU, and that was state of the art. Today, we are keeping in sync 5 to 6 different sources at the same time in sync to do that, and that was impossible to think about more than 10, 15 years ago. Who knows what we will do in 10 years, probably something that nobody is dreaming of. So I think it's very an evolving situation, but it's not an excuse to not start. You need to increase every time you have the opportunity, and it makes sense business-wise to make one step forward on keeping a better, secure ecosystem.
Yeah, and here, of course, we are running with technology evolution. I mean, it's of course, the example you make is nothing else than a picture of what the technological evolution has allowed also to work from the dark side. But I think finally it's also about partners. It is trust is here very important, that partners that deliver security can be trusted and are from their attitude also never compromised. I think this is absolutely essential and central. And here we also have, of course, a partnership built to also provide such a trust to our customers. And of course we have a legacy and an experience that is for sure building here the foundation.
I agree. And for me, the real moment of truth for the trust is you have deployed something, there is an issue which is happening, and you keep the trust and you're able to manage it and solve it or go over it. And that's where those moments where trust is increasing dramatically for, I won't say forever, but for a very, very long period of time. And that's key. That's back to my initial comment. You have to assume this is going to happen. And the key question and the hard problem is managing the post-breach situation.
Yeah, that's really what we find must deliver to our customers.
Exactly.